to Room 237, and a little bit of a different review today. It's not exactly a Giallo film, but it is, I don't even know if I could say Neo-Giallo, because it is certainly a throwback. It's trying to evoke the look and feeling of the 1970s, so I would say Giallo tribute or homage. And it's an Argentinian film, but it's in Italian, and it is 2013's Sonno Profondo, which means deep sleep. Now, this is the directorial debut of Luciano Onetti, who also, he did everything. He also scored it. He was the director of photography. He wrote it, directed it. I think he edited it. It was produced by his brother, Nicholas Onetti. And it's also the first part of their Giallo trilogy, which would be followed by Francesca and Abracadabra, which I have reviewed this. I do have Francesca coming in, and I can now say I'm intrigued to see Francesca, but these are two very different films. This one is definitely more experimental. This one definitely feels more like a Giallo film, narratively. And one thing that's interesting is this is only 67 minutes. It's a very short film. It did very well when it came out as far as film festivals go. You can see all the stuff it won. This is the limited edition from Brink Vision. It does have this kind of cool slipcover artwork that's in English. So it says Argentinian, but it says the screenplay was written in Italian, but if you watch the interview with Onetti, he says it was never in script form. Almost everything was improvised or worked out like in the moment. It was never scripted, and it was shot very guerrilla style. Especially, like, there's a scene in the cemetery where I'm guessing it's the killer or whoever. We see their car kind of back out and drive away. That was just a random guy driving. And then the scenes in the hospital, of course, it's a private place. They weren't allowed to film, so they had to do it in secret before they got caught. And the movie does do a good job at looking and feeling and sounding like a 70s Giallo. I'll say Abracadabra did do a better job with it. This one just comes across more as a student film, which trying to replicate an entire aesthetic and feel and narrative and everything of an older genre is kind of a student film project in and of itself. But with how experimental it is, and because it's a very different Giallo film. The entire movie pretty much, save for a couple shots here and there, is entirely POV. And not just POV, but POV of the killer, which has never really been done before. And it does get confusing. I'm still not 100% on what was going on. A lot of this movie is kind of a drug-induced fever dream. Just this sort of hypnotic, hallucinatory, just is very dreamlike. Which I will agree with Josep Luzon from TerrorWeekend.com. Hypnotic, unsettling, and disturbing. I will say it's very hypnotic. And one thing that does help with that is there's very little to no dialogue. There's a couple scenes where we hear, news footage of people talking, and then, there's the phone call the killer gets in the beginning, and then a couple sentences during his flashbacks. That's all the dialogue. So The complete lack of dialogue and this POV with the music and how it looks and just how dreamlike it is, it can get a little hypnotic. However, without any kind of real narrative or story, the 65 minutes does go by at a pretty slow pace. Now, this wasn't a bad film. I mean, it's definitely interesting. I could say I'm glad I saw it. If you're a fan of Giallo, it's definitely worth checking out. But after seeing Abracadabra first, I think my hopes or expectations were a little high. Now, the imagery is very cool, like the stuff with these wig heads and the lengths Onetti went to recreate like the blood from the 70s. He tracked down the exact kind of blood they used, so it's that very vibrant red, thick acrylic paint looking blood. It has its sleazy moments, especially in the very beginning, but it does get kind of hard to follow, especially when we get to, actually the whole movie's pretty confusing. I mean, the first shot of the film, it was kind of like, okay, yeah, we're getting set up for a Giallo. The first shot is just a black screen with the killer's black glove. And then we get the opening credits, which has nice 70s Giallo font. Music that does sound a lot like Morricone and Goblin, which there are parts that sound like a Goblin score. There are parts that sound more like a modern thriller type score. And then when we get more into like the dream state, or like the hallucinatory state, or whatever it was, it gets more sound effect and experimental. But I thought all three worked. Basically, so you have this guy, this killer, and yes, we pretty much see the entire film through his POV. So we see black gloves all the time, pretty much. We see him kill this one girl in her apartment. I mean, she's wearing underwear, but she's like legs up, taking care of herself. He kills her. He stabs her. We get that thick blood. He even goes down to a fountain to wash it, and that blood's not coming off. It looks like paint. And then he gets home, and I thought it was a nice touch. I think Abracadabra did it as well. He's reading a old Giallo novel, Authentico Falso by William H. Hallahan, which I believe is the Ross forgery, if you read it in English. But, so, he's at home, he gets this envelope slid under his door that involves pictures of him killing the woman we just saw him kill. Also, there's numbers written on the envelope, which we find out what that is later. And he then gets a phone call from someone with a staticky voice saying, you know, how could you do that to her? She didn't deserve that. You know, now I'm gonna kill you. Also in the envelope, there's a key to a hospital locker. So then the next part of the film is he goes to the hospital, he goes to the locker, and a lot of it is kind of just his POV as he's walking there. Like, just shots of the ground or what's all around him. The music is good thriller music. It does pull you in. When he gets to the locker, this nurse comes in. He kills her, which he like tapes a razor blade to her mouth, and then puts his leather jacket on her. Because then someone else comes in we know it's someone else because they're wearing white latex gloves, goes to stab him and sees it's someone else that's like tied to the locker. Then he gets home and he makes this drink with blood. I think he takes the blood and puts them in these baby dolls. So he takes a syringe, which in the syringe it definitely looks the most fake. So he gets a wine glass with this blood, puts some morphine in it, some pills, and yeah, it brings the glass like right up to the screen, and it kind of does like the a glugging sound, and then we get this long period of like flashbacks to his traumatized childhood, where like we see his little kid hands coloring, but he keeps going to pictures to like cross out, I believe it's his sister's face, gets a hold of a straight razor, and yeah, from here on out it gets confusing. We see in silhouette, it's someone bigger than him. I thought, actually that does make sense, so I'll save it for spoilers. But we see he had a messed up childhood. And then, we see him coloring again, but this time as an adult. Then like he's at a jewelry box, he pulls out a pearl necklace. And we have the flashback to when he killed that girl, which that girl was played by Diana Garcia, or Diana Garcia, and she's actually playing the killer and the victim at the same time, because it goes back and forth between both POVs. And then it's pretty much the end. Like and the twist, the only real twist is who's coming after him, but it doesn't set up any other characters, so there's no real, I guess it kind of sets up who it is, but it might not be someone you think about. This definitely works more just like an experimental student film. I mean, and I love how the quality, it has all the grit and the grain and the pops and everything in the look. It sounds great. I do like how there's very little dialogue. It is a very visual film. Like I said, that is what makes it the most hypnotic, or that's the most hypnotic part of it. We never do see the killer's face. And I do like how the blood is that very thick, vibrant red, fake looking red, like paint blood. But yeah, it's not, I really just didn't find it as effective as Abracadabra. I mean, I enjoy it enough. It's not that it's bad. I mean, there's definitely effort. There's definitely good intentions there. But for some reason, I don't feel like it was pulled off as well as, this film is very experimental. Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, who is directed by Bruno Forzani and Helena Catet, which I'll be picking up their first Giallo film, their Giallo homage, Aimer, soon. That's on its way as well. I'm very excited for that. And I guess it was interesting to kind of do this mystery through the killer's POV, even though it's really not a mystery. Other than the first kill, the very beginning, the other kills we get, other than that one nurse, who I'm not even sure if he killed, but it's all flashbacks. There's not really, I mean, it's definitely an original idea, and I commend it for that. I really did like the score. It sounded like a Giallo film when it needed to. It had good thriller music when it needed to, mainly when he's walking to and around the hospital. But when he's having those drug-fueled flashbacks to his childhood, is this very Chainsaw Massacre, like, experimental sound effect score that I also thought was effective. And a lot of the imagery, like with the wig heads, I know I've already said all this, but yeah, it is all leading up to this one final scene where we get like a slight twist, and then we get like the final twist, I guess. But I mean, spoilers. I can recommend it if you like more experimental, odd films, or if you like Gialli. Other than that, if you don't really like artsy films or Giallo, I don't think you're gonna get much from it. But I enjoy both, so I enjoyed it enough. But I thought Abracadabra was much better. I think that did a much better job at really kind of pulling off an authentic 70s Giallo. So now getting into spoilers. So towards the end, the killer is driving. He's pulling up to this one truck, and somehow there's a wreck. This is one of the scenes where it's not a POV. Also, when he goes after that girl in the woods with the pearl necklace, we kind of see him coming towards her, like around the trees, or maybe. I thought that was like a disembodied view, but I guess it was her POV. I do like the look of the killer, because it's got like this invisible man kind of bandaging. But there's an accident. We see, and all over the ground, we see, the blood, his dolls, his license plate, which is like 337, and then 3 other numbers. Those are the numbers that was on the envelope at the very beginning. And then as he's waking up in the hospital, the nurse or doctor comes up to him. She's got one of those voice boxes, and she says, the exact same thing from the person on the phone. How dare you do that to her? She didn't deserve that. Now I'm gonna kill you. And she says, I'm gonna put you into a deep, deep sleep for all eternity. She'll be waiting for you. So, and then she just juices him up with a lethal dose of, I'm guessing, morphine. But the beeping in the background from his monitors, it doesn't get faster. I don't know if that was just something they left out. Because, I mean, the killer's eyes are big, like, oh shit. But the heartbeat doesn't go up. I don't know if it was also to show that he's okay with death or he's not fazed by it. But then we follow the nurse to the locker rooms, where she opens this one locker, and we see like the jacket, the gloves, and the straight razor. She takes the straight razor, shuts the door, and it says Franco Mele, which right before she walked up to it, we see her name tag says Monica Mele, and in the flashbacks, the young kid was addressed as Franco. And I guess she has that thing because it was set up when he was a kid with a straight razor, when we see the silhouette on the wall of him slashing his mother's throat. I think it was supposed to set up that he killed his mother, but then I was thinking, well, she's there, so that must have been his sister, because I think he was like Xing out his sister's face in the family photos. But I'm guessing she survived, and that's why she has the voice box. But also when he's coloring as the adult killer after those sequences, like he puts a sheet of paper in the typewriter, types out death, then he takes the sheet out, and he colors with crayon. There's like 3 people, 2 of which are females, and 1 has the head cut off. And then it shows him sitting by these, it was like trifold vanity mirrors where he's got the wig head. And I thought he was wearing the wig at first, but he just kind of like turns it towards himself. That's kind of creepy looking. So it was his mother. Now, I don't know if the woman in the beginning was his sister or what. Like I said, it's not very clear. It's maybe if he had taken the time to write it. Again, it says the screenplay was written in Italian, but then he said that it was never in script form. Maybe just some things like something with a mystery and twists don't really work as well if you're doing this completely experimental, artsy, totally visual story, if you can call it a story. But yeah, so the woman that was after him was his mother. And I'm guessing I must have missed what caused the trauma of his childhood. All it really showed was he liked to draw X's on, or draw something on the faces of family photos. He had a straight razor, and he tried to slit his mother's throat. But, it does work a lot better that it's 67 minutes. It's forgivably short. Unfortunately, it does feel a lot longer at times. There were several points where I thought it was going to end, and it kept going. I was like, damn, for an hour long, this is still going. But it's certainly not a bad movie. It's just, it has its flaws. And, if I want to watch something more artsy and visual, I'll watch this. If I want to see, something truly evoking the 1970s across the board and have a decent story and narrative and arcs, then I can watch Abracadabra. But it still looks good with its gritty, grainy look to the film, with its score. Also, what makes it kind of hypnotic and kind of dreamlike is that not only is it all POV, but there's also a lot of tight close-ups. So it's not like you're looking at his hands from this level, you're looking at his hands from like this level, like the whole time. But it was still interesting to watch. You definitely still see and commend the effort, and its positives definitely outshine its flaws. So I'm still excited to see Francesca and close out this trilogy. But so far, even though I've seen 2 from the Onetti brothers and just 1 from the Forzani and Cottet husband-wife duo, I'm already leaning towards them more than the Onettis, but they're both still pretty good. So stay tuned for more Giallo tributes, and I'll have a bunch more Gialli coming in soon. And I'm actually going to be getting, not that I'll be buying some, but I do have more Spanish films to get into, and more of the hardcore extreme films to get into. So I got plenty to last me a while. So stay tuned for all those, and thank you for watching.